Let's look at our differences from a fresh perspective.
Using the Myers-Briggs Type Indicator.
The MBTI, one of the most widely used personality inventories in the world.
Isabel Briggs Myers and her mother, Catherine Cook Briggs, devoted their lives to expanding Carl Jung's theory of psychological type. The theory that an individual's seemingly random behavior is really not random at all.
The Myers-Briggs Type Indicator organizes people's behaviors into predictable patterns according to opposite preferences on 4 distinct scales.
Opposite preferences?
Opposite preferences. For example, most of us prefer to write with either our right hand or our left hand, whichever hand is more comfortable. We prefer to do what feels natural.
Ever try writing with the other hand?
No, too awkward.
I agree, too clumsy.
Why we write with one hand rather than the other is uncertain, but most of us would agree that it's easier for us to use either the right or the left hand, and that using the other hand requires a lot more energy and concentration. Handedness is similar to Jung's concept of preferences. We have mental or psychological preferences for performing certain tasks. The MBTI sorts 8 different preferences into 4 pairs of opposites and organizes them according to where we prefer to focus our attention to replenish our energy, how we prefer to take in information, how we prefer to make decisions, and what basic lifestyle we prefer. While we use all 8 preferences, we generally favor only one from each of the 4 basic preference scales. Where do we choose to focus our attention? To get energy from our outer world of people and things, or our inner world of thoughts and ideas? How do we tend to take in information? Through experiencing the present or through imagining future possibilities? How do we like to make decisions? Through logic-driven analysis or through a more personal process? And how do we live our everyday lives? Do we like to make plans or do we go with the flow? Do we like to reach closure by deciding quickly, or would we rather stay open to last-minute options? The MBTI helps people identify preferences. Today, we're going to explore each of the 8 preferences.
How are we going to do that?
Everybody's taking the MBTI now, right?
Right. We even have our results, but we want more information on what they mean.
I just have a couple questions.
That's understandable. Can you hold them till we finish the session? We're aiming to use our time together to create a video that makes the MBTI results understandable to all types. We're going to look at the 8 different preferences, 1 scale at a time. Speak out when you can claim a preference. Talk to one of the cameras and refer to your results as you describe yourself. Now, we're going to roll tape and play with the graphics and see if we can answer your questions along the way. Let's start at the beginning. What is your central focus, your source of energy? Some people tend to focus on and get energy from the outer world of people and things. This preference is called extroversion. Other people tend to focus on their own inner world of ideas and impressions. This preference is called introversion. The everyday meanings of these terms are different from their meanings in the MBTI.
I definitely prefer to focus on the outer world, what's around me, the people, the things, the activities. I have a preference for extroversion. Most people with a preference for extroversion prefer action and interaction over reflection, like to talk things over in order to understand them, are sociable and expressive, share their thoughts freely, have a wide variety of interests, and enjoy working in groups.
You probably take initiative in social and work settings, often appear relaxed, confident, accessible, and easy to know.
And when you want to get re-energized, you usually go out and get involved in activities that involve other people.
I'm sort of the opposite. When I want to re-energize, I need to be alone. I prefer to focus on what's inside my head, my ideas and images. I have a preference for introversion. I usually choose reflection over action, think things through in order to understand them, process my thoughts internally before expressing them, prefer written communication, and have a depth of interests. I may prefer privacy, being with only 1 or 2 others, or being alone.
Of course, your preference for extroversion or introversion is just part of the picture. Let's look more closely at the next set of preferences. They indicate how we take in information about the world through sensing or intuition.
I prefer to gather a lot of facts and details. I want concrete information. My preference is for sensing. People with a preference for sensing like to experience the world directly, relying on what we see, hear, smell, taste, and touch. When I eat an apple, I just experience it. I can tell by the smell, the crunch, the color, the taste, what kind of apple it is. Because we trust and rely upon what we've experienced, we tend to be practical people. We like specific details. We are present-oriented and trust our own experience. I am relatively patient with routine, and I usually enjoy using skills I've already learned and mastered.
People with a preference for sensing naturally look for details, facts, and concrete information, while people with a preference for intuition look for patterns, meanings, relationships, and possibilities for the way things could be.
That's me. I look for patterns and relationships in things. When I look at this apple, I think about Newton and his theory of gravity.
You use your intuition preference for taking in information. People who prefer intuition generally focus their attention on what lies beyond the surface. For you, future possibilities are often more important than present realities. You probably envision the future very easily.
I love learning new skills and trying new experiences. People say I'm abstract, theoretical, patient with complexity, as I try to see the big picture.
Now we've talked about two sets of preferences, extroversion, introversion, and sensing, intuition. The third set of preferences relates to how we use information to make decisions. Do we depend more on thinking or feeling? Both are rational processes, yet each is distinctly different. Again, be careful not to confuse the meanings of the preference terms thinking and feeling with their more common everyday definitions. Thinking does not mean intellectual, and feeling does not mean emotional. The thinking and feeling preferences describe the emphasis we give to various elements in our decision-making process.
I prefer to make decisions by being objective and looking at logical consequences. I'm most comfortable with the thinking preference. I solve problems through analysis. I use cause and effect reasoning. And I like things to be fair. People have told me I appear detached when I'm making decisions.
I can't be detached. I stay involved and make decisions based on what's important to me and to others.
Sounds like a preference for feeling.
Right. Well, those of us who make decisions on the basis of our feeling preference are driven more by subjectivity than objectivity. We usually base our decisions on human values and how each decision will affect us and others. We're usually considered sympathetic, compassionate, and want harmony and agreement without conflict.
Now we've looked at three sets of preferences: extroversion, introversion, sensing, intuition, and thinking, feeling. The fourth set of preferences on the MBTI reflects our basic approach to life, the way we live our everyday life. Carl Jung only alluded to these preferences. Myers and Briggs named and developed them as judging and perceiving. Again, a word of warning. Judging does not mean being judgmental, and perceiving does not mean being perceptive. The judging-perceiving scale reflects how we prefer to live every day. Do we prefer structure or spontaneity? Do we reach decisions quickly or prefer to look at all our options first? I prefer to make decisions quickly. I feel much more comfortable when things are settled and organized.
So you probably have a preference for judging.
I do. People with a preference for judging like to know the objective that will be achieved before any activity takes place. We like to complete one project before beginning another. We generally think of ourselves as organized and purposeful, with steady work habits. We like to plan and feel more comfortable when things are decided. Once we've decided upon something, we relax because we have a structure. We seem to commit quickly to plans or decisions and often finish tasks before a deadline.
I'm just the opposite. I prefer taking my time and taking in as much information as I can before I close off my options and make a decision.
You have a preference for perceiving. People who prefer perceiving like to stay flexible, keeping their options open. When new information is presented, you tend to reconsider things and may change your mind. People with a perceiving preference are open to seeing things through a variety of perspectives. You often work in spurts with varying levels of intensity and enjoy working on several projects simultaneously. People with a preference for perceiving generally appear to be adaptable and tolerant of ambiguity. Motivated by deadlines, you usually prefer to finish tasks at the deadline rather than before the due date. The Myers-Briggs Type Indicator helps us gain a glimpse into our own preferences and those of others, if they wish to share them. But it does not explain everything about the human personality.
It's not about right or wrong or good or bad.
It's not about stereotypes.
The MBTI is about preferences, 8 preferences in all. It indicates which 4 preferences, one from each scale, make up your personality type. There are 16 possible type combinations.
No one type is best, and no two people with the same type are exactly the same. Some people's preferences, as indicated by the MBTI, are clear, while others are just slight. There are endless variations within each type.
Our 4 personal preferences, clear or slight, interact, and that interaction makes up our unique personalities. We can use the MBTI to learn about ourselves, our motivations, and our potential areas for growth.
And we can use it to better understand, communicate with, and appreciate others.
Remember, it does not measure abilities or aptitude, just preferences.
And remember that our personal preferences are not always appropriate to every situation for ourselves or for our interaction with others.
Sometimes it's better to use our other hand or behave in a way opposite of what's most comfortable for us. That's easier when we understand why the natural and automatic response is not necessarily the best. At home, at work, or at school, sometimes we need to think about what the apple represents, and sometimes we should just eat it.
All relationships will benefit when we look at opposite preferences as differences which we can use constructively, rather than as differences that create roadblocks.
Psychological type offers us a way of making sense of seemingly random behavior, and it recognizes that each type makes its special contributions to the world.
There's really no such thing as a best type for a partner, or employee, or a boss, or a friend.
All types of people can and do work together in all capacities.
All types of people can and do form close and successful relationships with each other.
So, have we answered your questions?
Yes, you have. It all sounds logical to me.
And it sounds valuable to me.
Okay, let's wrap this up.
Yeah, let's do it.
Personally and professionally, the MBTI is an invaluable tool.
It helps people communicate better, resolve conflicts more effectively, build trust, and strengthen relationships.
The MBTI provides a way for people to understand their differences and gain a greater awareness of themselves and others.